Hey folks, another video in the Repairing Regimental Regalia, or Regimental Relics, depending how you want to look at it. The first in a series of at least 6 videos on concerning a group of kilts I've received. So once again, stand by for motion sickness. Right. So again, the purpose of this series, Repairing Regimental Regalia, is to show you, well, to give my appraisal of these 6 kilts which have been sent to me. I will not disclose the name of the sender unless they give me express permission. But the purpose of this video is to present my report about my assessment of the condition of these kilts and what should, or could be done to these things. Starting with, let's call this kilt number 1, as you see. Looking at it from the outside, aside from the fact that it's clearly been stored by rolling it up in a ball and shoving it in a box somewhere, and we're going to correct that, it's generally in pretty good condition. It's the waist size, and this has been a subject of another video, again starting with the very first seam on my left as I'm looking for the top of the kilt. I adjust for the radius of the back of the kilt and then straight, and this is a 41 to 43. I'd say call it a 42 waist. It's very long. It is over 20, it's like 28 and a half inches, which is what, close to 80 centimeters. And the reason for these kilts, the military kilts, for being so long was, in the past, this was single width cloth. It came off the mill, off the loom, about averaging around 70 millimeters wide. And the reason why was that's about the maximum. From prehistory, that's the maximum that an adult can throw a shuttle back and forth on a hand loom. But it also came with a wonderful, what we now call a kilting selvage, which is very rare these days because I'm not sure if any mills are even producing that anymore. So this is the heavyweight 22-ounce cloth. If it's made in 1996, the cloth almost certainly came from the House of Edgar. So it's in very, very good shape. However, there are a couple of things. First off, as I said, this is a black watch kilt. I know that because the pleats are pleated to the blue rather than the green. You'll see Argyle kilts later in this series. And they're knife pleats. An Argyle kilt is pleated to the green with box pleats. But aside from that, that's not a make or break issue, because the Black Watch were they had the first tartan, or the first military tartan, I should say, and it was government number 1. And then the Argyles had their tartan for the longest time was the same set, sometimes a larger set, but also woven in a lighter shade, and we'll see that later in the series as well. So Black Watch was number 1, Argyle was 1A, but that, again, that's not a moment to clutch our pearls with this thing, because the kilts from about military kilts, British Army kilts from about 1947. In my experience of repairing kilts for over 50 years. After 1947, we start seeing, where's that label? We start seeing a label that says kilt number 1, Black Watch, and Argyle's other ranks. So the system was recognizing that resources were scarce. So if an Argyle is wearing a Black Watch kilt or vice versa, hey, you're wearing a kilt. Typical with Army kilts, up until recently, I have a Royal Regiment of Scotland kilt in my to-do list. I'll have to take a look at see if it has the same characteristic. But one of the characteristics is the inner apron. Instead of having an apron pleat, as we see here, the inner apron just runs off from underneath the last pleat. And I'm almost certain that's a cost-cutting measure. Doesn't matter. A kilt with a deep pleat drapes a bit better, but we're not a fashion show. We're an army. Or I was. In any case, continuing to look at the outside of the kilt, the top band is in good condition. One of the hanging loops is missing, but I don't consider that a liability because I don't want people to hang their kilts. I want them to roll them up to put them away properly, and I'll cover that again later too. It has 3 buckles of the old pattern, although these are more recent manufacture than many I've seen. The tabs of the buckles are made of a material called Holland, which is a real blast from the past. It's a very, let's call it, it's an archaic cloth. It's almost looks like linen that's been painted. But all 3 of these are in really good shape. I don't see any need to replace them. On the other hand, the buttonhole here, there's clear erosion. The cloth has eroded away at one point, and that is because somebody has been putting their strap through the buttonhole and then pulling on it like this to cinch it tight, because all of us, the fat bastards and the skinny minis, all of us, we use our kilts as a corset. But the problem is, and we'll see this again on another kilt later in the series, if you pull it like this, you're going to damage the cloth or break the seam right there. The correct thing to do is put it through the buckle and then suck in as hard as you ever can and then pull it tight. And if you do that, this damage will not occur. This damage sometimes, the other reason when you see damage like this, sometimes the buckle will be mounted it'll be in the wrong place. If the buckle is over the buttonhole, the strap has to kind of double back to get into position, and that will cause it eroding as well. But it's a simple repair. It's not going to be invisible. It's going to basically involve using silk thread and doing sort of a blanket stitch over it to stabilize it. But, the damage has begun. We have to make sure that the damage doesn't continue from there. Carrying on the outside of the kilt, about the only thing I really want to change is the location of the left-hand strap. This is its original place. You can see from the stitching, that's, let's call it period correct to a British Army kilt issued until recently. But that's not the optimum place to sew it. It's much better. I mean, all 3 straps are in good enough condition. We don't need to replace them. They're showing a bit of wear, but they're not ready to be condemned. But what I want to do is move that strap so that it's sewn on the outside like that, because this gives you more room for adjustment. Because once again, and I've mentioned this in another video, at least one other video, when you put your kilt on, if you draw the left-hand strap up tight so that it is bottoming out against the buttonhole, the kilt has become too big for you. You've lost weight, or it's the wrong kilt. So if it bottoms out like that, the kilt is you simply can't get the kilt tight enough to stay in position. And I should say on that end, a properly fitted kilt does not need braces or suspenders, if you talk American. It doesn't need braces to hang from it. It doesn't need a belt to hold it in place. Just these 2 straps and buckles. When I say these 2, this lower strap and buckle is a sort of a vestigial remnant of the past. It really doesn't accomplish anything. But yeah, so I want to move that strap over so that it can properly be tightened. On the inside of this kilt, we have the original style of lining material, which has been used in uniforms, British uniforms, since the 1860s at least. It's still being made, but this is still in good enough condition. It's getting a little bit threadbare, but it doesn't need replacing just yet. Somebody's come up with their own sizing, size 9X, I guess. 42, they got that right. 28, it's a little bit long. Yeah, 28 is the right length. But on the back of the kilt, on the inside, we can see what I sincerely hope is evidence that somebody's been putting penitin on his chapped backside, because, yeah, that shouldn't be there. I think I can lift that out with a hot iron and a piece of parchment paper. On the other hand, some poor delicate daisy has decided that the nasty rough wool is too harsh on his on his wedding tackle, to use the Flashman phrase, and he's sewn in this piece of synthetic cloth. And in the middle of the synthetic cloth is what I sincerely hope is another example of penitin being used as an anti-chafe. But yuck. Okay, this has to come out. And some more evidence of penitin there. So I'm really hoping that an iron and a hot cloth, I can lift that. So yeah, so the buttonhole needs to be repaired. A strap needs to be moved. This abomination needs to be removed. Clean and press, and then possibly also the addition of a couple of rows of the woven elastic that soldiers have been using in their kilts since at least 1912, when it was, I don't know when it was introduced, but I have a Part 1 orders of the 1st Battalion Seaforth Highlanders, and in the back of it there was the price list for the regimental tailoring shops, so that when soldiers took their kilts or their other equipment to the regimental tailors, who were all soldiers, it showed what the prices were. And we see, I forget what, it was a couple of shillings to have a couple of strips of elastic put in. So we know they were doing it at least as early as 1912. Now looking inside, we find the label. And it's, pardon me while I use the old man zoom. Yeah, it's kilt number 2, it's wrong, kilt number 1, BW for Black Watch. NATO service number, British, I believe. This is interesting because it's got the soldier's name, musician, M-U-S-N, musician Young, initial B, his service number, and the waist breech and length in centimeters, and then the date of make, 1990, with the broad arrow. Oh, is that a Canadian broad arrow? Huh, could be. Dry clean only? No, I disagree. Dry cleaning is bad. Okay, so there is kilt number 1 and what needs to be done to it. I'm going to move out of the way for now, and I'll tune in a minute with my appreciation of kilt number 2. So once again, motion sickness alert.